welcome to the Yashi Show podcast. My name is Yasmin Madani, and my loved ones call me Yashi, and you can too. Today, we're exploring something deeply personal and yet very universal. I'm talking about values. What are they? Why do they matter? And how do they quietly guide the decisions we make every single day? Something important to consider is that we aren't born with fully formed values. So, where do they come from? For most of us, values begin at home. From a young age, family plays a huge role in shaping what we believe is important. We learn by watching the people around us. If kindness, respect, or hard work are modeled daily, those ideas start to feel natural to us. Sometimes it's not even what's said, it's what's done that leaves the biggest impression. Families also teach values directly. Phrases like always tell the truth or treat others fairly stick with us and begin to shape how we see right and wrong. Traditions matter too. Celebrating holidays together or participating in cultural practices can reinforce values like connection, responsibility, and respect. Even family rules and expectations play a role. Being expected to do well in school may build discipline and responsibility, while expectations about behavior influence how we treat others. And importantly, both positive and difficult experiences at home shape us. A supportive environment might build confidence and trust, while challenges might lead someone to value independence or resilience. I want to pause here for a moment so you can ask yourself the following questions. And feel free to use this as an opportunity to journal in your notebook or on a device. Ask yourself, what did my family seem to value most when I was growing up? What behaviors were rewarded and what was discouraged? Which of those values still feel true to me today? Just notice what comes up for you. If you choose to, you can pause the episode here and resume the podcast when you have finished journaling. Upon reflecting on these questions, for me personally, I remember growing up in a large extended family. And so values like family unity and sharing with each other and supporting each other were very important to me. Behaviors that were rewarded were doing well in school and being helpful to elders with tasks and responsibilities. Many of these values still feel true to me today, but the one big difference personally for me now is that I include myself in this value equation and consider my needs also. Something I didn't know how to do before, as my focus was always outward in supporting others primarily. In simple terms, values are the beliefs and principles that shape how we think, act, and live. They're ideas like honesty, respect, loyalty, and responsibility. You can think of them as an internal compass, always there helping you decide which direction to go, even when the path isn't clear. But here's the interesting part. We don't always notice them. Values often work in the background, influencing our choices without us even realizing it. A simple everyday example is how we use convenience to shape what we eat, even when we think we're making free choices. So imagine someone believes their value is health. They genuinely want to eat well. But in a busy weekday routine, they pass a coffee shop and a fast food place side by side. They don't consciously think about values in that moment. Instead, they feel tired, rushed, and hungry. Without noticing it, a different value, which in this case is efficiency or saving time, takes over. They choose the fast food meal because it's quicker, even though it conflicts with their stated value of health. Later, they might even explain the choice as I was just busy, not realizing that an underlying value, which is speed over health in that moment, guided the decision. This is what it means for values to operate in the background. They quietly compete, and the one that best fits the situation often wins without us even explicitly noticing it. In this way, values influence our choices, our relationships, our career, our self worth, and even how we speak to ourselves. I hope this episode helps you to not only understand what values are and where they come from, but that you'll begin to recognize how they've shaped your life so far and how you can consciously choose them moving forward. I want you to also think about values when you reflect upon why you occasionally said yes to something that you absolutely did not want to do. You know, those moments when something like someone asks, "Hey, can you help me move this weekend?" And somehow your mouth says, "Of course." But inside your body can feel that this is something you don't really want to do. Again, note that values are those invisible forces behind your decisions, your habits, your relationships, and yes, your occasional inability to say no. I'm very much can relate with that because that would always be an issue for me. But self awareness has really helped me probably to become more aware of what my values are. I hope this episode will help you to reflect and have more clarity on what values really are, where they come from, and why they sometimes make your life easier and sometimes also make them really confusing. And how becoming aware of them can actually increase your self worth and self love. So it can also help to build self love. So, how exactly do values shape our decisions? I mentioned earlier that we don't always notice values and that they often work in the background, influencing our choices without us even realizing it. Values shape our decisions by acting like an internal filter system that influences what we notice, care about, and ultimately choose, often before we consciously think things through. Here's how it works in a simple kind of way. First, they help us set priorities. Imagine you have a big exam tomorrow, but your friends invite you out. If you value education and responsibility, you'll probably stay in and study. But if you value social connection more in that moment, you might go out instead. It's not a random choice, it's about what matters to you in the moment. Second, values guide our sense of right and wrong. Think about a time when you had to decide whether to tell the truth, even though it was difficult. If honesty is one of your core values, that decision becomes clearer, even if it's uncomfortable. Values also shape our relationships. For example, if a friend trusts you with a secret, your reaction and how you handle that information depends on what you value more: loyalty or attention. Choosing to keep that secret builds trust. Choosing to share it can break trust. Over time, these small decisions define how others see you. They even influence our future paths. When choosing a career, some people prioritize stability and financial security, while others chase passion or creativity. Some are driven by a desire to help others. These decisions aren't just about jobs, they're reflections of deeply held values. And then, of course, there are those difficult moments when you see something unfair happening. Do you speak up or stay silent? If you value justice and courage, you might step in. If you value safety or avoiding conflict, you might hold back. Again, your values are guiding you. What's powerful is this: two people can face the exact same situation and make completely different choices. And both decisions make sense when you understand the values. The environment we live in, whether it's free, controlling, or even fearful, also affects how our values develop and how we act on them. In free environments where people feel safe and supported, individuals are more likely to explore and express their true values. For example, imagine a student who values creativity. In a supportive classroom where ideas are encouraged, they might confidently share their thoughts, take risks, and develop their talents. Their values are not just present, they're visible. Now consider someone who values open communication and emotional honesty. In a healthy, trusting relationship, they feel comfortable expressing how they truly feel after a disagreement instead of bottling it up or avoiding conflict. If something their partner said hurt them, they gently bring it up, explain their feelings, and listen to the other person's perspective. Because the relationship is supportive rather than defensive or judgmental, their value of honesty isn't suppressed. It becomes visible in everyday interactions like discussing problems, making joint decisions, and sharing vulnerable thoughts. In contrast, a less safe relationship, the same person might stay quiet to avoid tension, and that value would be less visible in their behavior. In controlling environments where rules are strict and authority is emphasized, values like obedience and discipline often become more important. For example, a teenager might value honesty but choose not to speak openly about their opinions because they fear punishment or disapproval. In this case, their true values exist, but they are hidden. Imagine a teenager who is living in a very strict household where parents strongly emphasize obedience, high academic performance, and respecting authority without question. Rules are clearly enforced, and mistakes often lead to punishment or long lectures rather than discussion. This teenager actually values honesty and independence. They like thinking critically and forming their own opinions. For example, they may question why certain rules exist or have different views about school pressure and career expectations. However, when a situation comes up, such as getting a lower grade on a test, they choose not to tell their parents the truth right away. Instead of saying, I struggled with this topic and didn't understand it, they might hide the grade or say everything is fine. Not because they don't believe in honesty, but because past experiences have taught them that being open often leads to disappointment, criticism, or loss of privileges. Over time, they also start to self censor in conversations. Even when family discussions touch on topics like future careers or personal interests, they may agree outwardly with their parents' expectations rather than expressing their own needs. Their value of independence is still there internally, but it becomes less visible because the environment rewards compliance more than openness. In this way, the controlling environment doesn't erase their values, it suppresses their expression of these values. The teenager continues to hold those beliefs privately, but their behavior shifts towards safety and obedience in order to avoid negative consequences. In environments that strongly emphasize obedience, people may learn to follow instructions without questioning them. Imagine an adult child who grew up with a narcissistic parent, someone who often demanded attention, dismissed the child's feelings, and reacted strongly to any disagreement or perceived criticism. As an adult, this person may value independence and honesty, but in interactions with their parent, those values can become harder to express. For example, the parent might ask about their life decisions, career, relationships, or finances, but the conversation quickly shifts to the parent's opinions and emotional reactions. If the adult child tries to share a different perspective, the parent might respond with guilt. After everything I've done for you, or anger, making the conversation emotionally difficult. Over time, the adult child learns to avoid conflict by adapting their responses. When asked about something sensitive, like choosing a job they are passionate about instead of what the parent prefers, they might say what the parent wants to hear, such as agreeing that the safer option is best, even if they privately disagree. In this situation, their true values like honesty, autonomy, or self direction are still present internally, but in the moment they prioritize emotional safety and stability in the relationship. As a result, their outward behavior becomes more about managing the parent's reactions than fully expressing their own beliefs. And in fear based environments, decisions are often driven by avoiding consequences rather than personal belief. Imagine a university student in a program where professors are very strict, grade harshly, and publicly criticize mistakes during lectures. The student actually values curiosity and deep understanding, and in a different environment, they would normally enjoy asking questions and exploring ideas. But in this fear based setting, they start to shift their behavior. For example, during the lecture, they notice something they don't fully understand. Instead of raising their hand to ask for clarification, the student stays silent because they worry the professor might respond with embarrassment or criticism in front of others. Even when studying, they focus mainly on memorizing exactly what will be on the exam rather than exploring related concepts that genuinely interest them. When exam time comes, they also avoid taking intellectual risks on essay questions. Rather than presenting a thoughtful but slightly uncertain argument, they stick closely to answers they believe that the professor will approve of, even if it limits their expression of ideas. In this way, the students' decisions are shaped less by their value of curiosity and more by the desire to avoid negative judgment or losing marks. Values are living beliefs. They grow, they shift, and sometimes may change depending on what we experience. Therefore, they are shaped by something we all go through, which is life experience. Life experience is one of the most powerful forces in shaping your value system because it turns ideas into personal understanding. It's one thing to hear phrases like honesty matters, be kind, or work hard, but it's something completely different to actually live through situations where those ideas are tested. For example, you might genuinely understand that honesty is important. But if you tell the truth and it leads to punishment, embarrassment, or conflict, you don't necessarily stop valuing honesty. You start to think more deeply about how and when to use it in real life. And that's really the turning point because it's where values stop being just abstract ideas and start becoming lived experiences that actually shape how you see the real world. Every day, we make hundreds of decisions. Some feel easy, others feel stressful, and often that stress comes from conflicting values. Take career choices. If you value creativity, freedom, and financial security, you might be torn between a high paying job and a creative one. Without clarity, both options can feel wrong. But when you recognize what matters most right now, the decision becomes clearer. The same thing happens in relationships. If you value both harmony and honesty, you might struggle between keeping the peace and speaking your truth. That discomfort doesn't mean something is wrong, it means your values are pulling you in different directions. Or think about boundaries. If you are taught to please others or always be good, saying no can feel uncomfortable. even when you're overwhelmed. That's because your sense of worth may be tied to being liked or needed. Here's the key: when your values are unconscious, they control you. When they're conscious, they guide you. A lot of dissatisfaction in life comes from living out of alignment with your true values. This can look like feeling stuck, burnt out, or like you're living someone else's life perhaps. For example, someone might have success on the outside, money, status, achievement, but they can still feel empty on the inside. And that's often because their life is built on values that were taught, not the ones that truly matter to them. So, how do you realign? First, notice your current values. What do you spend time on? What frustrates you? What do you admire in others? Then ask yourself, which of these values were inherited and which feel genuinely mine? Next, choose a few core values, maybe 3 to 5, that truly represent who you are and define them in your own words. And finally, start aligning your actions with them. Ask yourself, if I really value this, how would I show up right now? And that's a great activity to do. So I really encourage you to try to take some time and go through that process if you can. Because self-love isn't just a feeling. It's choosing in alignment with your values, even when it's hard. It's saying no when you mean no. It's resting when you need rest. It's speaking your truth. And it's walking away from what doesn't honor you. Every time you do that, you reinforce one really powerful message. And that message is that I matter. So as you reflect, ask yourself, what values have been guiding my life? Which ones are truly mine? And what might I change if I started living by them more intentionally? Your values are your compass, and the more you follow them, the more grounded and aligned your life will feel. As we wrap up today and you try to do some of these questions and reflections in your journal, I really encourage you to do that. Just know that your values are always guiding you, whether you're aware of them or not. They shape your choices, your relationships, and how you see yourself. When you feel stuck, overwhelmed, or disconnected, it's often not because you're doing something wrong. It just might be a sign that you're out of alignment. So remember that. And that means you need to figure out what truly matters to you. But the moment you begin to notice your values and to question them and to choose them intentionally, you get to take your power back. Thanks for joining me today, listeners. Remember, my name is Yashi and I believe in you. Hope you'll join me again next week on The Yashi Show. Until then, be kind to others and also remember to be kind to yourself.